Okay, the black coffee theory. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen this trending theory sweeping its way through social media lately. And the funny thing is, depending on who you ask, it's actually taken on two different meanings. Now, don't worry, I'm not leaving anybody out here today because we're going to talk about them both. They're both slightly different variations of this theory, and they both focus on slightly different things. One version focuses on what happens when you do speak up and you don't feel heard, and the other version focuses on what happens when you never really say what you want in the first place. While they cover different topics, both variations of this theory point to the same uncomfortable truth. A lot of us move through our lives feeling exhausted, frustrated, and disappointed. Not because we're incapable, but because we're unclear, we're inconsistent, and we're settling in ways that we don't even realize. We spend a lot of time explaining what we don't want, and we spend even more time hoping that other people or life itself is just going to figure it out for you. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. And clarity changes everything. In today's episode, I'm going to use both variations of this theory to explain to you why clarity is so important and how this way of shifting your thinking is applicable to relationships, boundaries, self-respect, and actually getting what you want out of life. Because this is one of those things that once you see the pattern, it's very hard to unsee it. And this will likely change the way that you're showing up every single day.
Welcome to the Mindset Gym podcast, where we exercise your way of thinking to help unlock your hidden potential. I'm your host, Emily Irwin, a registered nurse and holistic nutritionist with a passion for all things health, fitness, and personal development. All right, let's get into it.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Mindset Gym podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We are diving into a trending theory that's been making the rounds on social media lately. And as I mentioned in the introduction, I am going to be talking about two different versions of this theory because depending on who you talk to, it seems to have taken on two different lives of its own. But I think they're both good, and I think they both strike up a really interesting discussion about needing to be more clear about the things that you want and not just settling for a life of frustration and disappointment. Both variations of these theories are going to force you to look at the way that you're showing up day to day, look at the patterns of your behavior and how you're communicating with others, and how that's actually impacting your satisfaction with your life. So, I'm going to get into the first variation of this theory, or at least the first one that I came across. I want you to imagine that you're walking into a coffee shop, and in your mind, you want to order a latte. So you go up to the counter, and the barista asks you what you want to order. And you say, "I don't want black coffee." The barista says, "Okay, what do you want?" And you continue to repeat to the barista, "I don't want black coffee." The problem is, you're not going to get what you want by continuing to say that. The barista can't read your mind. The barista doesn't know that you not wanting black coffee means that you want a latte. All the barista is hearing is what you don't want. And thinking of it in this example, it sounds very silly, right? None of us would go into a coffee shop and just keep repeating over and over again the things we don't want. That's not how you actually get what you want because nobody knows what you're talking about. This would be similar to you getting in your car, opening Google Maps, and typing in all the destinations that you don't want to go to. Is that going to get you where you want to go? I don't think so. Google Maps also can't read your mind. And so the key takeaway from this variation of the black coffee theory speaks to the fact that this is how we often show up in our day-to-day lives. We often speak out loud only about the things that we don't want. I don't want to be broke. I don't want to be lonely. I don't want to be unsuccessful. I don't want my life to not have meaning. I don't want this. I don't want that. And we give so much of our energy and so much of our focus and so much of our intention into what we don't want, but we never really speak into existence the things that we do. And the problem with this is the universe is going to work in a similar fashion to that barista in the coffee shop. When all you're giving it is information about what you don't want, it has no idea what direction to take you in. It has no idea what to serve you because you're not being clear about what you want. You're not being clear about what your goals are. And without any clarity about the destination that you're trying to go to, there's no route that can be built, right? There is no map for how to get there because you don't really know where you're going. You haven't been clear about it. So I think this is what we really need to be doing with the way that we approach our day-to-day lives, is being more vocal and being more intentional and being more clear with what we actually want, and stop giving all of our focus into what we're trying to avoid. The thing that we don't even realize we're doing is by constantly giving all of our energy to the things that we're trying to avoid, we actually start inviting more of that into our lives. There is a part of your brain called the reticular activating system, and it is going to look for patterns. It is going to look and seek out, it is going to look for and seek out the information that you feed it. So I'll give you a very common example of this. If you suddenly decide that you're going to buy a car and you find the make and you find the model and you find the color and everything that you want to buy, and suddenly in the coming weeks, you start to see that make and model and color of car everywhere. It's not because more people started buying it. It's because you fed that information to your brain and your brain picked it up as, oh, this is important. This is something I need to focus on. And so it starts picking out every model of that vehicle in your vicinity and bringing it to your attention. Because there is so much stimuli and so much stuff going on in your surroundings every single day. And if your brain allowed all of that information and all of that stimuli to get to you 24/7, I think our heads would explode. So it has a very good function of weeding out all of the things that it deems to be not important and feeding you the things that it deems to be significant. And so when you start thinking about certain things, your brain says, oh, this thing is significant. This thing is important. Let's filter that through. It's like the bouncer outside of a club. It starts to say, oh, okay, we're going to let you in now. We're going to let you in. And then you start suddenly seeing a lot more of this thing. And so it works in a similar fashion. If you constantly are just talking about what you don't want, what you're trying to avoid, that's what your brain sees as significant. That's what your brain is going to focus on. And you're going to get more information that lines up with the life you don't want. And this is how you can get stuck in this hamster wheel of just ruminating on what you don't want and ruminating on what you don't want. And you wake up 10 years later and your life is everything that you don't want because that's what you spoke into existence. So I want that to be the first lesson from this theory. Stop talking about the things you don't want. Stop giving it your energy, stop giving it your focus, and start giving your energy and focus to the things that you want and be very clear about them. Figure out all the details, figure out the timeline, figure out exactly how you want it to look like, and speak that into existence. Make that your main focus because then your brain will work with you. It will start to seek out more ways to help you get to that destination because it sees it as significant. And another thing that is not really, that doesn't really have to do with the black coffee theory, but I think it's an important thing to tie into this entire topic, is I think part of the reason so many of us struggle to very clearly articulate and start working towards the things that we actually want is because we're afraid of being judged. We're afraid of looking stupid. We're afraid of being seen trying. We're afraid of being seen failing. We're afraid of what everybody else is going to think. And so it actually feels a lot safer to sit and just talk about and ruminate on the things that you don't want versus actually saying out loud, hey, I want this thing. I want this really big thing to happen in my life, and I'm going to start working towards it no matter how stupid I may look. And so I think this subconsciously is maybe a big reason why we don't lean into this as much as we should. So this is my challenge for you this year. I want you to lean in to being a little cringy. And I need us to stop seeing it as a bad thing. Being seen trying, being seen failing, being seen fucking it up and picking yourself up and trying a million times over, I want us to stop seeing that as a bad thing. That is the best thing. Because it means you're doing something about your goals. It means you're doing something to change the life that you currently have. I don't know at what point in our existence being cringy became such a negative thing, but I want to lean into it this year. 2026 is going to be the year of you leaning into being cringy as fuck and being proud of it. Because honestly, it's necessary. If you are trying to change something major about your life and go after something that you've never done before, it's going to require you to step into unfamiliar territory. It's going to require you to fuck a lot of things up. It's going to require you to make mistakes and come back and start over. And part of that is having people see you be a little cringy and having people see you fumble your way through it. But that's not a negative. I think that's something to be really proud of because it means you had the balls to try, and that's powerful. So that's my little side tangent to the first meaning of this black coffee theory is we're going to make this the year. We're going to make this your cringy year in the best way possible. So, on that note, I am going to dive into the second commonly seen meaning of the black coffee theory. The second one. I want you to imagine for a second that you are dating a partner who you know prefers black coffee. That is their preference. That is what they like. And yet, every single day, you give them coffee with cream and sugar. The problem here is not the coffee. The problem here is that you are not listening to or respecting or valuing your partner's stated preference. Now, the problem in this situation comes from you, but it also comes from your partner because your partner doesn't speak up about the fact that you're giving them coffee that they don't like. Although they may have stated their preference in the first place, they don't say anything when you serve them coffee with cream and sugar. They just take it and they sit in the disappointment and they sit in the frustration, hoping that you will just figure out one of these days that you don't actually like your coffee with cream and sugar. And so instead of speaking your preferences and being very clear about the fact that you're being served something you don't want, you just stew in frustration about it. So this version of this theory speaks a lot to relationships and the way that people treat each other. And a common mistake that we often make. I think a lot of the times in relationships, we expect our partners, our friends, our family members, whatever it is, we expect them to read our minds. We expect them to just know what we like. We expect them to just figure it out. And without you ever communicating your preferences, you expect them to just show up in the way that you want them to. And the problem with this is the other person in this dynamic cannot read your mind. They don't know. They're making best guesses based on the information that you're giving them, which in this case is very little. And what happens is because the person is operating on very little information, they continue to show up in a way that you don't want. You continue to stew in frustration and disappointment about it until one day, all of this frustration and all of this disappointment on your end and all of the confusion on their end builds up to a head and you have a blowout of an argument over something that could have been a very small, very fixable thing much earlier on. So, on that note, I want to give you kind of three main takeaways from that version of the theory as it relates to the partner giving the wrong coffee and the partner receiving the wrong coffee and saying nothing about it. The first one, preferences are not demands. You having a preference about something in any relationship and communicating that to the other person does not make you demanding. It does not make you high maintenance. What it does is it makes you someone who clearly communicates their needs for the betterment of the relationship. And this doesn't always have to be about coffee. Maybe you're someone who, in your romantic relationship, really values having alone time every so often. Maybe you're someone who really values consistency. Maybe you don't want to rush commitment in the relationship that you're in. Maybe you want more quality time with this person. You're not demanding for speaking that into existence. There is so much value and importance on you clearly communicating your needs to the other person and making sure that they are understanding of what it is you need in the relationship dynamic, because that's how it's going to thrive long term. The second key takeaway of this is that repeatedly ignoring preferences is a choice. And this part of the theory becomes important when someone has clearly communicated what their preferences are. So in this instance, communicating that you prefer black coffee. If your preference has been clearly communicated, you've repeated yourself multiple times, the other person in the relationship has expressed understanding of this and then continues to ignore it, That's not a lack of communication. That is a sign that they don't respect or value your needs. They just assume that you will adapt to what they're serving you, or they believe that their way is better than yours. And if that's the dynamic you find yourself in, this may be the moment where you pause and reevaluate the relationship dynamic, because this is not an issue of you not communicating your preferences. This is an issue of the other person not listening or not caring enough to do anything about it. Now, on the flip side of this, and the third takeaway, tolerating the wrong coffee is still a decision. So while your partner may have been told your preferences, they may have expressed understanding, and they may continuously be showing up in the wrong way or giving you the wrong coffee or doing the wrong thing, even though you've communicated that you prefer something different, you keeping your mouth shut and tolerating that is a choice in and of itself. If you keep saying nothing and drinking the coffee anyways, the other person has no incentive to change. So this theory shines a light not just on the person who's ignoring the preferences, but on the person who decides to say nothing about it. What are you really afraid of if you continuously, clearly communicate your preferences and how they're not being respected? So this portion of the theory gives you some things to mull over as it relates to your major relationships in your life, whether it is really important friendships, whether it's romantic partners, whether it's family members, whoever your close relationships are. Preferences should be clearly communicated, and they should also be respected once they are communicated. Consistent disregard for your preferences when you have clearly stated them to the other person is a red flag, and you settling silently for that continuous disrespect is going to lead to a huge buildup of resentment. Compatibility in your relationship matters so much more than potential. And I think a lot of times, so many of us stay in relationships that are not working for us, where the other person is not being the person that you need them to be. And you stick around not for what it currently is, but for the potential of what you think it could be. If this person just fixed this or did this or showed up in this way, it would be perfect. And despite you continuously trying to make it that way and continuously trying to communicate that you want it that way, it never really is. But you stay anyways, hanging on to the potential of what it could be. So if you are someone in that situation, I want you to take a look at your relationship and think to yourself, what is my life going to be like? How am I going to feel about this relationship if nothing ever changes? If things, the way they are right now, is as good as it's ever going to get? Because the unfortunate truth is that most people are not going to live up to the potential of what you think they are in your head. The version that they're presenting to you is who they are. And if this version of that person is not the kind of person that you want to be with, then maybe it's time to reevaluate. And I want to be clear, this portion of the theory is not against compromise, because that is kind of a different discussion, and that is a good way for you both to meet in the middle. This conversation is really more about respect for your preferences and boundaries. And I also want to say, if you maybe occasionally run into a roadblock like this, it doesn't immediately mean that your relationship has to end. One occasional mishap does not equal incompatibility. Really what this comes down to is pattern behavior, not just one-off mistakes. And before you throw in the towel, make sure that you have taken every step to clearly communicate what is going on and try to find a solution. But at the end of the day, tying both of these versions of the black coffee theory together, they both speak to a similar theme. Clarity is so important. Clarity in your preferences, clarity with how you want to show up in your relationships, clarity with what your goals are, clarity with what you want your life to look like, and putting your energy and putting your focus into those things instead of putting your energy and focus into the things that you don't want, or putting your energy and focus into just keeping your mouth shut and keeping the peace. I want you to lean into clarity. I want you to lean into really getting a grasp on what it is you want out of your life and your relationships, and focusing on steps you can take to achieve that. You speaking into existence the things that you don't want, or you ignoring the hard conversations and keeping your mouth shut and hoping that other people and that your life is just going to read your mind and serve you up what you want on a silver platter is a great recipe for you to get absolutely nowhere. Because clarity is not about being demanding or rigid. It's about being honest with other people and with yourself about what you actually want. And once you're clear about those things, two things are going to happen. The right things will start finding you faster, and the wrong things will stop sticking around so long. And that is the real power of clarity, and why you leaning into that is going to change everything. So that's the black coffee theory for you. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you like the episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, or share the show with a friend. Your support helps this show reach even more incredible people just like you. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time at the Mindset Gym.